Hello, I'm Gary Stearman. Welcome to Skywatch TV. We have with us today a very special guest. Many of you may have heard her on the radio. Her name's Sharon Gilbert. Hi, Sharon. How are you?
I'm fine, Gary. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Listen, we've got a lot to talk about today, but before we do, I just want to mention your husband, Derek. You and he do a radio broadcast. Tell us about it.
Well, we've been doing a podcast on the internet for about 10 years. We sometimes refer to ourselves as a grandma and grandpa of Christian podcasting because at the time that we started it in 2005, it was brand new, and we were blessed to get in early, so we got it in iTunes early, and we're just so honored that the Lord has expanded that ministry. We're worldwide, and we've reached a lot of people. It's incredible.
It's called PID Radio. What does PID stand for?
Well, originally we called it Peering into Darkness, and so we shortened it to just the letters, but the reason we called it Peering into Darkness is because both Derek and I believe that our time is short before the Lord returns, and because of that, it's like the veil between our worlds, between the supernatural and the natural, is thinning, and we find that the darkness, the evil plans of the enemy are becoming more and more obvious, at least to those who have eyes to see, and rather than become part of that, we sort of like spies peer into that and report back what we see.
And that nicely brings us to our topic, which is your new book called Ebola and the Fourth Horseman of the Apocalypse. You know, when you say the word Ebola, it conjures up a myriad of nightmares.
It does. It does.
We hear all kinds of things about it. We've seen pictures of people dying, very horrible deaths. This is a kind of a new plague. And let's just talk about what Ebola is. By the way, we should mention that your background has to do with biochemistry, biology. Tell us about that.
I have a degree in biology and at Indiana University where I studied, which is the alma mater of James Watson, who is the co-discoverer of DNA. You have to choose when you initially start as a biology major what track you're going to go, because biology is a huge science. So I chose genetics. So cell biology, genetics, molecular biology, that's what I studied for 4 years. And I was just starting on my doctoral work. I was blessed to get into a doctoral program in neurophysiology that didn't require a master's. So I had started on that, didn't get to complete it because I met my wonderful husband on the internet. And because we decided that we were going to get married and we eventually started a ministry together, I chose the MRS rather than the PhD.
But you still have lots of info.
I have not stopped learning.
Now, the subtitle of your book has to do with the fourth horseman of the apocalypse. And I'm just going to, for those who may not know about this fourth horseman, Revelation 6:7 says, "And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him, and power was given unto him over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, with the beasts of the earth." This horse, this pale horse of death, and you've written a lot about this particular pale horse. I know enough of the Greek New Testament to know that he's really a pale green horse.
It's chloros,
Chlore. And, when you think of pale green, maybe with a little fog thrown in, and that's sort of the color of death.
It is. It's what we think of in the monster movies. You see something as pale green, it's very sickly.
Indeed. And so sickly would, I think, describe this horrible horse. A lot of people see in Ebola maybe an unstoppable plague, and we've seen pictures of it, little photographs that seem to make it look like a serpent. It's like a little coiled serpent shape.
It is.
You have a lot to say about that.
Well, I refer to it as the blood serpent because when microscopists look at the Ebola virus through their microscope, they will inevitably, if they recognize what they're seeing, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, we've got worms, we've got snakes," because that is a very recognizable conformation.
Wow.
Yeah, it's terrifying when you think about it because you're right. It's one of the most horrible ways to die, but think about what the enemy wants. God is allowing the enemy to take reign over the earth in the last days before Jesus returns to earth.
And you say blood serpent. Now, one of the aspects of this horrible disease is that it causes hemorrhaging.
Yes.
High fever and hemorrhaging, and your body just literally begins to bleed to death.
It's almost like it melts.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so it's a hemorrhagic fever, and we've read about plagues in the past that killed thousands of people. People are afraid now that there may be no way to stop this thing. Where do you see it going? What's happening?
If you look at the news, it appears to be waning, but this is typical of viral epidemics. They will burn for a while and then they will start to wane as the doctors take hold. But it wouldn't take much at all for a firestorm to begin in the West. Right now in West Africa, it's horrible because primarily over there the medicine it's very backward compared to what we have. If they have a washing bowl and a pitcher of clean water, that's considered amazing over there. They have very little. So essentially the hospitals are where you go to die. They're almost death houses. Over here we've got much better medicine, but look at it. We had two nurses who got sick over here in our wonderful healthcare system. So if Ebola were to take hold here in the United States, it could really devastate a city.
It could indeed. Now, Ebola is a virus, and in her book, Sharon refers to viruses as biological machines. What do you mean by that?
Well, viruses are interesting entities in that they are not living nor are they dead. They're not inanimate, but they're really not animate in the sense that they have their own metabolism and reproductive systems. In order to multiply, a virus has to hijack your machinery of your cell to make copies of itself, and in so doing, it destroys the cell. I really think, because viruses have been around since the dawn of man, is what we're told. In fact, if you ask an evolutionist, he'll say that viruses were here long before man arrived. So they're very old, and I believe that before the flood, it's my theory, and again, this is a theory, it's my theory that as part of the incursion into corrupting the DNA of mankind, you look at Genesis 6, which you've talked about a lot, where the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they created giants. Another way to do that same science is by hijacking the DNA, forcing a change in the cell's DNA, because a lot of viruses called retroviruses actually insert their DNA pieces into our DNA, and when they're gone, they don't destroy the cell, but they have changed the DNA. They've mutated us.
There's something kind of dark and satanic about that.
It's like nanotechnology, isn't it?
Yeah, nanotechnology.
That's exactly what I think that's what a virus is.
And so some dark, perverted technology has inflicted this upon mankind. You use the terms Thanatos and Therion.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit. That's got a nice kind of a verbal ring to it.
It's got a nice alliteration, doesn't it?
Yeah, but when you begin to look at what Thanatos and Therion are talking
so nice.
about, it's not so nice.
No. I find it very interesting. I'm currently doing research just on the four horsemen themselves to see what the Lord is trying to tell us through John. The first horseman comes out, and he's got a toxon. He's got a major bow, we're told, which has a lot of subtle layers to that meaning, and I'm sure that you know well, probably better than I do. But toxon not only can be a bow, it's an arcing implement. It can be a missile. So this is a major war that takes place. He's taking over the earth through peace and through war. The second one is the war on the red horse, and he follows up with the crowned one, who is the Antichrist. And then the third one we have, he's carrying a scale. This can mean economic control, because this is all about taking control of the earth and creating the new world order out of chaos. The third rider has the scales, and it's a way to control people. That's really what it comes down to. This is economic control. It is, and you get to the fourth rider, and it's control again, even though this rider, and it's the only rider who's named. It's always he that's sat upon. This one is named. His name is Thanatos. And Thanatos in mythology, and I really believe that mythology is just another way of looking at things that truly happened in history.
Right.
Thanatos is the son of Nyx, the female knight, and Zeus. So he is a god, and he is given power to take men to death. His brother, his twin brother, is Hypnos, and he takes men to the sleep that's like death. So when the Apostle Paul refers to Christians who have fallen asleep, and those who sleep that are later wakened up, that's the brother Hypnos who's taking them there.
Well, you're talking about the book of Revelation here, which in general gives a picture of the old dark gods that have been locked in hell for literally millennia. The angel has the key to the bottomless pit. This is all opened up. These horrific beings are released to plague human beings on planet Earth, and millions of people die. And it is a part of the judgment that the Lord brings at the last day. And in a way, it's a fitting judgment. The evil that man has wreaked over the millennia now comes back to haunt him.
Oh, exactly. Well, take a look at the secret societies of today who are worshiping Lucifer, the Luciferian organizations, whose main goal is to establish the kingdom of Nimrod. You talked with Dr. Michael Lake, and he discussed this idea that the main plan is to create this new world order and replace God, to storm heaven, to take away the promise that Jesus has given to us. And by bringing in these old gods, it's like Lord saying, okay, Earth, I'm going to give you what you want. You want these old gods? You got them.
Now let's turn from sort of the ethereal to the down to earth, and let's talk about vaccines. Right now, I suppose a lot of people are working to try to develop a vaccine. What are the odds that we'll have one?
We will have one. They're in trial starting in late November, early December in West Africa. There are at least 4 candidates. There are 2 that I know of that are going to be tried in West Africa. The plan as of early January is to get those early phase 1 reports, and once it's clear that it's safe, according to the experts, that it's safe, that it's effective, and they can figure out the dosage for a person who weighs, let's say, 200 pounds, or someone else who only weighs 100 pounds, and does it work in children, so does it work in older people. Once they've determined all of those, we'll all be asked to get vaccinated eventually, because this isn't going away. We keep hearing the director of the CDC, Tom Frieden, saying over and over again, as if it's a talking point memo, this is the new HIV. This is the new AIDS. AIDS is still with us. It hasn't gone away. Ebola will always be a plane ride away.
HIV we think of as being behaviorally induced. That is, there are risky behaviors that can cause you to pick up HIV, and I suppose there are risky behaviors that would make you more susceptible to Ebola.
When Ebola first started making the news around March or April, the mainstream media news, we were told over and over again, you can only contract Ebola through bodily fluids. That is true, but you can also contract it through bodily fluids that are expelled through sneezes. And those can land, blood, sputum can land on a surface. And we now know through studies that have finally been revealed by the CDC and by our federal government at USAMRIID that they can last for up to 50 days.
Wow.
So if you do not properly sanitize that surface, it is theoretically possible to contract Ebola from that surface.
Sharon's book, Ebola and the Fourth Horseman of the Apocalypse. The fourth horseman of the apocalypse is a horseman called death, who rides forth in judgment. As a Christian, I believe that when that horseman rides forth, I'm going to be in heaven with the Lord.
Amen.
I believe in the pre-trib rapture.
Amen.
I teach it. I believe that when the four horsemen are released, it'll be after the rapture of the church has taken place, which is not to say that we shouldn't be careful, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen before the rapture takes place. And we need to understand how we fit into this modern world as Christians. What can we do, Sharon? And I'm thinking of meeting in church on Sunday, conversing with like-minded believers, and talking about Ebola among ourselves as Christians. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, one of the biggest things, the reason I believe we were told in advance what will happen in the latter days is so that it would ignite us, it would energize us when we see these things happening. We've read about it, now let's go tell people, look, this was predicted thousands of years ago. It's happening now. Mm-hmm. You need to accept Christ before these riders are sent out. It should make us go to our family members, our neighbors, get on our knees and pray, because we won't be here, but other people will. And if we plant the seed, even if those people do not choose Christ before the riders start their hellish ride, once they are informed, they may well accept him afterward. And it doesn't matter when you accept him, as long as you do it before you die.
You know, the idea of judgment being prepared, I think is a thought that is in the minds of most people today. There's an uneasiness, there's an economic uneasiness, a political uneasiness, and now there are these diseases beginning to pop up, and Christians look at this as a very significant signal that we probably are in the last days.
And I want to make sure that people understand, I am not saying the riders have started. I refer to these as what I call Braxton Hicks contractions. Yeah. The Lord tells us that in the latter days we would have lots of earthquakes, we would have, changes in the weather, changes in the seasons, in the skies. We would look for all of these things, and they would be like contractions leading up to a birth. The contractions are getting closer together and more intense, but the birth hasn't happened yet. The riders aren't out yet. If you've ever had a baby, ladies, you know what a Braxton Hicks contraction is. Happens 6-8 weeks before the actual birth date. You're sure that you're going to go. The baby's coming early, and then your doctor says, oh, no, you're fine, go home. That's all it is. It's a preview of what is to come. I believe we're getting a preview of what is to come to wake up the bride. Wake us up so that we go out and we warn people before those riders go out, before we meet the Lord and we're gone.
By the way, that's our role as Christians, to sound that warning to the world, not only the gospel, but the fact that a judgment day lies in the future.
That's right.
And it's possible to escape that judgment day.
Amen.
If you're born again, you come to the Lord Jesus Christ and receive his promises by faith, the blood sacrifice, the redemption available through the Lord Jesus Christ. You've got this incredible blessed hope that says you're going to be taken out of here before judgment comes. However, prior to the judgment, just as you say, there are the birth pangs, which, by the way, is a figure that's used all the way through the Bible concerning the last days.
Exactly.
And so that's one of the ways we know we're there.
Yeah, and we can get excited about that.
Sure.
There's no reason to fear. I wrote this book trying to tell people, this is what the virus is, this is what the signs are. Yes, you should be concerned, but this should drive you to your knees and out to witnessing to your friends. And in the meantime, you can prepare your home. And there are a number of ways you can do that. You can prepare it with medical supplies, with food supplies, non-perishables, Bibles. The internet may go down. We may not have access to online Bibles. People, once you've planted the seed, they need to be able to get to the Word.
You can sort of convert your home into a medically sound, if you will, shelter.
Exactly, because when we're gone, our home can still provide a witness if we prepare it adequately in advance.
Wow. The book, and listen, I want to talk about the book right after I mention the title again, Ebola and the Fourth Horseman of the Apocalypse. One of the things I noticed about this book is the depth of the research. Now, what I'm about to say may make you think, oh, I don't want to read that book. But you do want to read the book because Sharon has really gone into depth and detail, quoting the experts on what this disease is, a little of the history, the spiritual, if you will, implications of Ebola, and not only that, but the technical aspects of Ebola, how it develops, where it came from, where it's going, how you can live in a world where there is Ebola. Your book is just loaded with details.
Oh, thank you. I tried very hard to make it as useful as possible, as quickly as possible, because this is something that's taking place so fast that a lot of people could be taken unawares by it.
In fact, I think fast is the word these days.
Yeah.
Things are really popping in a hurry.
Yeah, they are. And that's exciting. We need to really take hold of that and be rejoice that our redemption draweth nigh.
You know, Jesus spoke of the days that I think we're living in right now. In Matthew 24, the disciples asked him, you know, what will be the signs of the end of the age and what will be the sign of your coming? And he talked about earthquakes, and he talked about famines, and he talked about pestilences, diseases. And, you know, today we have diseases, and we also have chemical and biological warfare, for example. There are poisonous gases. There's radiation threat. There are all kinds of things that could be classified as pestilences. And I think one of the goals of your book is to sensitize people to maybe how they can provide a good defense for themselves and their families.
Yeah, spiritually and physically.
Yeah, and both of those are important.
Yeah. Yeah, because Jesus met physical needs in order to open the door to witnessing this, to their spiritual needs. And I think we need to do the same thing. Provide, as I say, that shelter, you know, while we're here and even after we're gone. When Thanatos rides, he's given Therion. That's the pestilence, the beasts, where it says he can kill with beasts. Those are tiny beasts. That word means tiny beasts. And I believe that refers to the viruses and the other pathogens that are going to be released on his ride.
So, you know, and I noticed that in reading the book. It's an interesting concept. Sharon talks about the fact that a beast may not be the size of an elephant. It may be microscopic. And by the way, these things are microscopic. They're very, very tiny.
They're very small, about 1/100th the width of a human hair. Very, very small.
And they look like a little coiled.
They look like a little serpent.
In fact, some of them look like a snake extended out with a little kind of a loop at one end.
They do, which I found really interesting, because one of the weapons that Thanatos is given is when you picture death, he's always got that scythe with him.
Right.
That's a long pole with a curved weapon at the end. That is the word Ramphia. That's his weapon, in addition to the beasts and death. He uses this to kill. Ebola sometimes does stretch out, and you'll get that little curve at the end, looking very much like a Ramphia.
Like the classic Mr. Death with that long scythe on a pole.
Exactly. Well, that's Thanatos. And inherent in the word therion is the root word ther, which means setting traps for men. So inherent within the pathogens is a trap. This is all about setting up the new world order. That's what these four horsemen are doing.
Let's take just a few seconds and talk about this. Some have said that the spreading of disease in the last days might be part of a program to reduce the population. We hear, you know, the experts sometimes say that there are too many people living on Earth, and one way to rectify that would be to allow the disease to spread.
Well, it's ironically, the Ebola czar, Ron Klain, that has been appointed by President Obama, has no experience in pathogens. He knows nothing about medicine or science. He's a lawyer and a former lobbyist, and he is a big believer in reducing the world population.
Wow.
Both he and his wife.
An interesting thought. I wish we had longer to talk, but you know what? We're out of time.
Oh,
It goes so quickly, particularly when you have something interesting to talk about. The book, Ebola and the Fourth Horseman of the Apocalypse, absolutely loaded with information from a Christian point of view, a biblical point of view. It's going to be edifying for you. Read this, you'll become as much of an expert, maybe more of an expert, than a lot of those people out there talking today. And with this book, by the way, we're including how to use your home as an emergency shelter. Sheltering in Place. It's a DVD that talks about the 7 steps of converting your home and making it a place where you can survive.
that's a perfect pairing. That DVD is awesome.
So you get the book and the DVD. It's called Sheltering in Place for $29. If you call the number on your screen right now, and just call that number, ask for Ebola and the Fourth Horseman of the Apocalypse, plus the DVD Sheltering in Place, yours for $29. Edifying, necessary, I think, necessary knowledge in today's world. We have about a minute left. Anything you'd like to say to people by way of your perspective, both as a Christian and as someone who has studied biology?
Let me just say that I believe that year 2015 is going to be pivotal, and I believe that you need to learn as much about prophecy now as you can. If you're in a church that is not preaching prophecy, please talk to your pastor. Try to arrange for a Bible study. If that turns out to be impossible, have one in your home. You need to let people know what Jesus told us about what is coming.
As Christians,
Yes.
we have hope.
We do.
In fact, that's the thing we have that I believe distinguishes us. No matter how dark it seems to be getting out there, we have not only the blessed hope, but we have the hope that comes with knowing that we are indwelt by the
That's
Holy
right.
Spirit of God.
Well, on our podcast, my husband and I talk about dark things, but we laugh a lot because we are joyous.
Sharon,
Our Lord
Gilbert,
is coming back.
we're just out of time.
Oh.
And it's been a great joy talking with you.
Thank you.
May the Lord bless you and yours. I'm Gary Stearman. Thanks for watching Skywatch TV.